I didn't know a person could turn 30 and 12 in the same night until Mia stood on a dining chair at my birthday party, tapped her glass with a fork like a sitcom wedding scene, and announced to a crowded living room that she was polyamorous now, that this was an alignment with her truth, and that I needed to accept it or we're done. The room smelled like Costco cake and candles and that slightly burnt tang of apartment oven pizza. My best friend Nate had queued up a playlist I'd made for myself, 2010's indie and some shameless top 40, because we'd always joked that getting older meant becoming unapologetically basic, and getting basic was freedom. But there, in my little Oakland walk-up, with people packed in so tight the winter air fogged the windows and left breath on the glass, Mia turned freedom into a threat. Friends shifted, mouths tightening in the way you do when someone fumbles a toast and drops it into a drain. She wore the red sweater I bought her for Christmas last year and the necklace her aunt gave her that she swore made her feel brave. I was still laughing from some dumb joke when she said the line, "Accept it or we're done," and a hush fell like a blanket pulled too hard, edges fraying. She had that glow that isn't a glow, the stage light of attention. I remember the click of my jaw as I stopped chewing, the clink of Nate setting down a beer he'd just opened for me, the millisecond where the sound of the fridge motor suddenly filled stupidly loud, an appliance humming through a rupture. "Mia," I said, and my voice came out like a radio signal with static. "You're doing this now?" I wasn't opposed to conversations about non-monogamy the way some people are, like it's a moral fault or a fashion trend. I've listened to podcasts. I've had friends for whom poly is a real thing that took work and consent and calendars and color-coded Google invites. But Mia's way of doing it, public announcement, ultimatum, felt like she'd built a bridge and set it on fire at the same time, just to watch the glow on her face. "I need to honor myself," she said, and I could hear how she was quoting TikTok therapy language as if the adjectives came with receipts. A couple of her friends, newer additions to our circle from her improv class, nodded like hype people. My cousin Jess mouthed, "WTF," from the kitchen. I put the plate down gently on the counter because I realized I was still holding it, and I could feel everyone's eyes not sure where to land, like we'd all walked in on a scene and were waiting for the director to yell cut. The worst part wasn't even the ultimatum. It was the tiny flash of triumph in her eyes as she saw me struggle for air, that glimmer that said she'd rehearsed the feeling of being the one in motion while I stood still. "We can talk tomorrow," I said, trying for adult, trying for calm, because I could already sense how later she'd say, "I made a scene." She tilted her head the way she does when she wants me to sound defensive so she can sound measured. "It's not complicated," she said to the room more than to me. "I'm polyamorous now." A couple of people clapped, scattered, apologetic. If you've ever been humiliated in public, you know the specific physics of it. The way laughter and pity and silence have weight, how your hands forget what they're supposed to do with themselves, how time goes gelatinous. I nodded once, like I was agreeing to a meeting. I cut the cake, because somebody had to. We sang off-key, weirdly solemn, like a hymn. Mia kissed my cheek for the last time as a girlfriend. Too friendly, oddly ceremonial, and I felt the heat of it and the cold behind it. Nate squeezed my shoulder. Someone tried to make conversation about a new Korean barbecue place. Someone else talked fast about crypto, like a parachute. People left at different speeds, shame dripping off their coats. When the door finally clicked shut on the last guest, the frosting dried at the edges and the pizza smelled like regret, Mia said, "I'm sleeping at Amy's," as if this were logistics, as if everything could be arranged by calendar invite. "We'll talk Monday." "It's Friday," I said, because grief makes you dumb. She shrugged her little shrug and grabbed her overnight tote, the one I bought her at a street fair, and I remembered when we used to do these small kindnesses for each other without turning them into evidence. After the door, the apartment felt like the aftermath of a storm party you threw for a hurricane that never came. I washed the plates. I stared at my reflection in the dark window like you do when you're too tired to be alone with your thoughts and too wired to sleep. My phone was a small sun with messages. "You okay? Dude, call me." And then one from an unknown number. "Hey, I'm Aaron. Can we talk about Mia?" I typed, Who is this? And then I paused. I backspaced. I stared at the 3 dots from a stranger. The fridge hummed its stupid hum. The city outside kept being a city. My birthday candles had left wax on the table like little bodies, and I didn't even make a wish.
I didn't respond to Aaron that night because a part of me thought it might be a prank, and the rest of me was busy falling down a stairwell inside my skull. The next morning, after a sleep that was basically a series of short blackouts, I woke to text from my mother, all emojis, all hearts, Jess, call me idiot, and Nate, who is my emergency contact and acts like it, coffee, now. We met at 10 a.m. in a place with plants that pretended to be a jungle and ceramic mugs that looked like minimalism had gone to grad school. Nate asked me what I needed from him. Not how could she, or you should do X, but the more honest thing, what do you need? I told him I needed to not be told that I was lucky to have a choice when my choices felt like a fork placed in me. He nodded. He didn't say Mia was trash. He didn't pop the bubble of my history with her with a pin of righteous rage. He just sat there with the patience of a man who's watched me lose intramurals, finjobs, and high school prom dates, and knew grief has a metabolism, and some hurts you can only sweat out. After coffee, I finally texted the unknown number, the one that had identified itself as Aaron. "Who are you?" He replied quickly. "I'm the guy she told she was single." A quiet clarity slid into me like a knife you almost miss because it's so sharp. We set up a call. On the phone, Aaron told me they met at her improv show's bar night, and she'd said she'd just gotten out of a relationship. He'd found my Instagram through a mutual and realized the timestamps didn't match her story. He wasn't calling to fight me, he was calling to not be drafted into her war. We shared notes like men at a clinic comparing symptoms. Dates, screenshots, the weird grammar of her texts when she's lying, overuse of TBH, lots of I feel like, the way she quotes therapists the way other people quote movies, the calendar gaps that could swallow small planets. He wasn't a villain. He was a guy who liked a girl who told him a story. We both were. I didn't scream into the phone because I didn't want to punish a stranger for standing where I stand. I just said thanks. And after we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and opened a note on my phone and titled it Facts. I wrote, "She made a public announcement. She used an ultimatum. She had been seeing someone and told him she was single. Facts are not feelings, but they keep feelings from gaslighting you. If you've never been in a relationship with a person who makes language their weapon, you might not know the relief of a bullet point." Over the next week, I did the things you do to survive. I ran until my lungs reminded me I was alive. I ate very little, and then too much, and then something resembling food. I texted the group chat and was held by memes. I cried in my car in a Target parking lot. I scrolled through subreddits like a tourist at other people's disasters looking for my exit. I unfollowed Mia's improv team because they posted clips with captions like, "We don't fear truth," and it made my teeth itch. Monday came, and Mia arrived with the careful calm of someone who intends to convert you. She had a small notebook, because of course she did. She explained that her therapist had helped her name things, that monogamy had always felt tight, that polyamory was a calling. "We can build a structure that honors us both," she said. And I said, "With an ultimatum and another guy?" She did the thing where she doesn't respond to the noun she doesn't like. She answered everything else. "You're catastrophizing," she said, softly, like she was putting a blanket on me I hadn't asked for. I asked her if she had been seeing Aaron while we were together. She said, "I explored some connections." I asked if she'd told him she was single. She said, "I didn't label it." I said a sentence I had never said before. "I'm not your antagonist." She stared at me with pity, my least favorite of her expressions, and said, "I know what you're doing. You're making this about cheating because monogamy gives you a moral high ground." I felt the conversation trying to drag me from my body into a courtroom where the judge wore her face. So I held on to my facts, which I'd printed because printing is a way to give weight to your sanity. I said, "I'm not consenting to any relationship model that begins with an ultimatum, and I'm not consenting to the story where I'm the villain in a narrative you wrote after the climax." She blinked. I think I surprised her by being composed. "So you're breaking up with me?" she asked, a sliver of contempt on the me, as if I'd failed a test that would have promoted me to a more enlightened rank. I said no, and my voice found a shape I recognized. "I'm recognizing you already left." She told me I was small-minded. She told me I'd regret not expanding. She told me I'd find someone basic, with basic needs, and that would be tragic. I told her to take her things. She took the toad I bought at the street fair and the red sweater and a plant she always forgot to water. After she left, I sat on the floor and laughed, like a man who'd found a nail that had been in his foot for months. That night, I posted on r/true off my chest. Not the blow-by-blow, not a revenge porn of details, just a note to the void. My girlfriend announced she's polyamorous now at my birthday and told me to accept it or we're done. I'm choosing done. The comments rolled in like strangers putting pebbles on a grave. Somehow that helped. A DM arrived from a woman I didn't know. She did something similar to my friend's brother last year. Be kind to yourself. I didn't forward anything to anyone, didn't name names, just built a small fence around myself and painted it with the word no. The revenge was not yet a plan, just a fact of refusing to be the museum that housed her version of me.
Revenge, when it finally came into focus, did not look like sabotage. It looked like restoration. I changed my locks, not because I thought she'd come back to take something, but because rituals matter. I updated passwords. I took myself off the joint gym membership we'd been sharing because it was under her promo, and I wanted my own key fob that beeped my name. I called my therapist, the one I'd ghosted after 3 sessions 12 months ago when things felt fine, and this time I told the truth without trying to sound impressive. He said, "What does your body do when you try to say no?" I said, "My jaw gets tight." He said, "Practice relaxing it," and then asked me to notice what I felt when I stopped narrating and started naming. I told him I felt small, and then giant, and then relieved, and then like a kid who got tricked. He said that made sense. I didn't want to make sense. I wanted to be a guy who doesn't get blindsided at his own birthday by someone who used my kitchen chairs like a TED Talk. But there I was, a human being, not a meme. Weeks passed and grief did that thing where it rearranges the furniture at night so you stub your toe at noon. I ran more. I learned to cook one good thing, chicken thighs with lemon and garlic, the internet's favorite, which I ate like I'd invented it. I took up boxing at a strip mall gym that smelled like rubber and consolation prizes. A trainer named Bria taped my hands and told me that I punch like a yelling type of person, which is to say, loud at the start and sloppy at the end. I kept my job, product manager at a startup that makes dashboards for dashboards, and I did it well enough to not be fired and not so well that anyone would ask me to speak at an all-hands. I saw friends and didn't turn them into jurors. I stopped explaining Mia to people who knew her casually because explanations are tires that spin mud. The world, rude as ever, continued. Bills, emails, memes about eggs. Then, 2 months later, I got a text from a number labeled Aaron, bar guy, because I'd saved him that way. "Heads up, she's telling people you're stalking her online." My stomach flipped, not because it was true. I had muted her months ago. My thumbs moved on to more honest addictions. But because I know how rumors work in improv circles, where narratives are a sport. "I'm sorry," he added. "She broke things off with me. It's a mess." He then sent screenshots, unprompted, of messages where she implied I'd been harassing her. She didn't use my name. She used a clever vagueness like, "My ex won't stop watching me," which is a pernicious kind of curse because it invites people to picture a wolf, and then you, quiet in your apartment, find teeth in your hand. I felt the old urge to write a manifesto. Instead, I wrote a dossier. I collected what I had, my initial post, without names, the muting receipts, the screenshots of her "I'm sleeping at Amy's" and "We'll talk Monday," the text log where I'd asked directly and calmly, "Have you told people I'm stalking you?" And she'd replied with, "I feel unsafe when you interrogate me." There I was, the weaponization of feeling into fact. I didn't blast it. I sent 3 messages. surgical as a scalpel. One to the Improv Theater's manager, whose email I found on their website. One to Amy, our mutual friend who cares more about truth than about team. And one to Mia herself. The messages were brief and polite, as if written by my future self who had learned not to explain his entire heart every time someone threw a rock. I've been told there are rumors I'm stalking Mia. This is untrue. Here is my documentation, which I'm sharing privately only to correct the record. I will take no further action and prefer not to be in any conversation about her. Please treat this as a single correction and a boundary. The theater manager wrote back, to my surprise, apologizing. He said someone had raised concerns, they'd been vague, and he appreciated the clarity. Amy called me. She said, "I love you, but I love truth more," and then told me that Mia had cried in a green room and said I was monitoring her. Amy, who has survived a father who monitored her mother, said she couldn't be casual about a claim like that, so thank you for providing receipts. She said, "I thought you knew you weren't that guy, but I needed one fact." It's amazing what a fact can do. Mia texted me a paragraph that used the word disappointed 5 times and unsafe 3. I did not respond, not because I was stonewalling, but because the conversation was over. The revenge clicked into place not as fire, but as scaffolding. I would build a life so sturdy and transparent that her smoke couldn't cling to me. I started volunteering once a week at a community center where a man named Lewis taught teenagers how to use Photoshop so they could make posters for their bands that only existed in their heads. I thought I was teaching software. Turns out I was learning how to be seen without performing a defense. I also did one petty thing because I am not a saint and because stories like mine always have a petty gem that glints in the sun. I planned a makeup birthday party 2 months late and called it my first 30. We rented out a back room at a bowling alley with carpets that looked like a galaxy had thrown up, and I invited only people who didn't need me to prove anything. Nate made trophies out of spray-painted plastic dinosaurs and labeled them stupid awards like Best Spare Soul. We took a group photo where everybody looked like they belonged, and I posted it with a caption that said nothing about her and everything about air. The night ended with cheap beer and a conversation with a woman named Kelsey, who laughed like she was agreeing with the world. She asked me what I was proud of. I said, saying no without a speech, and then realized that was the speech. We traded numbers. I slept 8 hours in a row for the first time in months. Revenge, I thought, might just be the act of becoming the person your younger self needed, minus the audience.
The actual cinematic moment, the one you're waiting for if you like a clean arc, arrived late, at a mutual friend's backyard barbecue when the spring light had turned the edges of everything gold, and people were discussing whether hot dog buns had gotten smaller or our expectations had gotten bigger. I wasn't planning to see Mia. Social circles in the East Bay have a way of overlapping like Venn diagrams drawn by an ambitious toddler. She arrived with a group, sunglasses on even though the sun had dropped behind the neighbor's fence, the gesture of someone who wants to be in a movie about herself. I had done the work. My body did not tense the way it used to. I said hello like she was weather. She said my name like it was a closed door. Some folks still in her orbit arranged themselves around her, and I saw the way a narrative makes a nest and sits there. At some point during the second round of drinks and the first round of grilled corn, Aaron showed up too because the bay is small and irony is large. He nodded at me, that micro grimace of solidarity men exchange when they have survived the same bridge collapse. Mia did what I expected. She floated toward the center of the yard, lifted her chin, and told a story about healing and finding her community and how boundaries had saved her life. I do not begrudge anyone their salvation. I begrudge only the way she used the word abusive, like a smoke bomb, vague enough to raise eyebrows and specific enough to lower mine. I didn't interrupt. I didn't counter. Amy caught my eye from the guacamole and gave me a look that said, "We see you, we see her, and seeing is enough." But then a younger guy, new to the friend group, probably from the improv class pipeline, asked Mia a question. and he asked it with a genuine curiosity that made my heart hitch. If someone didn't consent to poly, is it still ethical to issue an ultimatum? Mia smiled, and for a second I saw the person I loved, the way she used to answer questions in college seminars like she was surfing. Ultimatums are just boundaries with consequences, she said. The yard murmured. I felt my jaw tried to lock, and I breathed, the way Bria taught me, into the hinge. I wasn't going to say anything until Mia added, with a casual venom meant for my ears, some people prefer their comfort over growth. That did it. Not because my pride needed polishing, but because somewhere a young person might be listening and learning that consent is just a sticker. I stepped forward, not to perform, but to correct. Boundaries are about your own behavior, I said, and my voice was calm like I'd borrowed it from a future in which I was a teacher. Ultimatums that try to control someone else's consent aren't boundaries. They're manipulation dressed in self-care. The yard went quiet in the way only a yard full of people with degrees in feelings can. Mia turned her face toward me, and the sunglasses made me feel like I was talking to a mannequin with a good jawline. "You're making this about you," she said.
I am talking about me, I said, and I have receipts. I didn't pull out a folder. I didn't project screenshots on the shed like a petty TED Talk. I simply met the eyes of the people I cared about, Amy, Jess, Nate, and let them see that I was not there to win, only to tell my one necessary truth. I was issued an ultimatum at my birthday party, I said, voice steady. I declined. After that, rumors were spread. I corrected them privately. I'm not here to litigate. I'm here to eat corn. Laughter, the good kind, the pressure valve kind, moved through the yard. Mia tried to pivot to theory again, but Aaron, quietly, said into the lawn, "She told me she was single." You could feel the click as the scene decided not to be hers. She blinked. She reached for the narrative toolbox and found, for once, it didn't fit the screws. She left soon after, not dramatically, but in the small way people leave when they would rather write the ending than watch it arrive. I took a breath that felt like a house with windows open. After, Amy hugged me and said, "That was the most boring revenge I have ever seen," which is to say, the healthiest. Nate gave me a plastic dinosaur that said, "Best boundary." Kelsey, who had become an unhurried part of my weeks, slid her hand into mine and squeezed once, not as triumph, but as acknowledgement that sometimes winning is just not losing yourself. Months later, I would learn that Mia had moved to Portland and joined a new team and was probably telling better stories to people who hadn't seen the previous seasons. I don't fault her for wanting a fresh audience. Maybe she'll grow into the language she uses. Maybe she'll stop making performances out of announcements. Maybe I'll stop needing to narrate my life as defense. On the anniversary of my first 30, I bought a small cake, the kind with too much frosting, and I lit one candle because I didn't need spectacle. I made a wish I can tell you because it came true. I wished to be a person whose life does not depend on who is watching. I posted nothing that day. I went for a run in the late sun, and the city did its city thing. Buses, dogs, 3 kids arguing about which superhero is the most ethical. I texted Aaron to see if he was okay. He sent back a photo of his new puppy with the caption, "Trust issues but hopeful." I called my mother and let her do her emoji thing. I opened my window and let in the smell of someone else's dinner and the sound of a neighbor singing badly but bravely. I sat at the same kitchen table where a year before I had written facts, and I wrote a new list titled Self. It wasn't a dossier. It was a blueprint. It said, I say no without a speech. I tell the truth without a performance. I love without auditioning.
I leave parties when I want to. I keep the lock changed and the window open. I accept that some stories end mid-sentence, and that is a blessing. If this is revenge, it looks less like a knife and more like a mirror I'm not afraid to look into. And when I blow out the candle, I don't wish for someone to come back or for someone to watch me. I wish for the same steady, almost boring thing. A life where my consent is not a plot twist, and my birthday is just my birthday.